Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why is a corporate lawyer talking about climate change? And you'd be right. I'm a corporate lawyer. I've got 2 decades of experience as a corporate lawyer. I'm also a company director. I sit on the board of a $26 billion superannuation fund. I don't care about the environment. I don't care about the community, especially anyone that doesn't live south of the Yarra. I care about money, and I care about risk. And that is the lens through which I advise my clients in relation to climate change. Now, the reason for that is that you might have misunderstood climate change as an environmental risk issue. That is only one part of the story. Back in 2015, the Bank of England did a report in which it identified 3 primary financial risks associated with climate change. We have the physical risks that Joelle so eloquently outlined for us. But we also have economic transition risks and liability consequences associated with climate change, which is my favourite subject. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about is to primarily focus on those economic transition risks associated with climate change, because that's what I spend most of my time talking to clients about. So, what are economic transition risks? These are not the ecological impacts of climate change. They are commercial and capital market responses to the threats associated with climate change. And there are 3 categories of those that we focus on. First of all, policy and regulatory responses to climate change, like the carbon tax that we had and then didn't have. Like the Paris Agreement, which you might have heard of, but what exactly is it? It's an agreement between 196 countries recognising the absolute criticality of keeping global warming well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial averages. Because above that, the scientists like Joelle tell us, the ecology of the planet collapses. Not only that, Article 4.1 of that agreement, countries around the world agreed that in the second half of this century, the global economy will be operating on a net zero emissions basis. We call that the mother of all market signals. Never before have 196 countries said, this is the direction that we are taking all our policies. In addition to that, we have technological economic transition risks. Now, this is a capitalist market at work. Innovation, development, things like electric vehicles, competitiveness of renewable energy technologies, battery storage. This is people innovating and making money in response to the threats associated with climate change. And finally, shifts in social preferences and stakeholder expectations. Now, this is the one that continues to surprise me. I don't know if you've been as shocked as I have to see the speed at which public attitudes towards plastics have changed, even this year. If we think about the different stakeholders that are involved in business, within the next 5 years, millennials are going to be 60% of purchasing power in our economy. Has anyone tried to hire a millennial lately? Oh my God. It's all about the values and making sure that their values are reflected in whatever they buy and who they get their turmeric lattes from and who they work for. They get this. They started learning about sustainability in kinder. We have our corporate regulators, APRA, ASIC, the ASX, all saying climate change is a material financial risk. It's a risk to financial stability that needs to be managed by business in the same way as any other financial risk. And we have investors waking up to the fact that climate change is a material financial risk. really got brought home to me when, this is 2018 data, but from 2016, the World Economic Forum, those socialist, lefty, greeny, hippie CEOs of the 1,000 largest corporations in the world, every year they publish a report on what they perceive to be the greatest risks to the global economy for the next 12 months. A failure of climate change mitigation and adaptation. Number one economic risk. But before I close, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention the scary American. This is my scary American. His name is Larry Fink. Who is Larry Fink? He is the most powerful man in the world. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. Who is BlackRock? The largest investor in the world, with $6.2 trillion US dollars worth of assets under management. To put that in context, on average, BlackRock owns 7.8% of every listed company on the planet. So when BlackRock says jump, companies say how high. And for the last 4 years, in his annual letter to the chairs of the companies in which BlackRock invests, Larry has identified of the top 3 issues that keep him awake at night: climate change as a material financial risk. I've got the logos up there of all the other large investors that have expressed similar sentiment. Also Standard & Poor's and Moody's, the 2 large credit ratings agencies, who are re-rating their entire books of both corporate and government credit ratings because they understand that they have been under-factoring risks associated with climate change into those credit ratings. So, to close, it does not matter if you think that climate change is a socialist conspiracy cooked up by the Chinese to hurt the US manufacturing sector. It doesn't matter if you think that you don't believe the science. It doesn't matter because markets believe it. It's a financial risk issue. And when markets move, nothing else matters.